Your gut is missing something right now. Not a vitamin, not a supplement you forgot to buy. A living bacteria that your great-grandmother ate with dinner every single day, for free, without ever hearing the word probiotic. The probiotic industry wants you to believe gut health is complicated. It isn't. It's just been sitting in a jar on a shelf for thousands of years, quietly fermenting, waiting for humans to remember it exists. For thousands of years, humans didn't take probiotics. They ate them. Buried in cabbage left to sour in a clay pot. Hidden inside milk left out just long enough to transform. Bubbling quietly in a jar on a kitchen shelf, while a grandmother went about her day, trusting a process she couldn't see and didn't need a microscope to understand. Today, gut health has become an industry. Capsules, powders, engineered strains with patent numbers instead of names. And somewhere in that transformation, we lost the plot. We started manufacturing what used to simply exist in our food. Modern guts are struggling. Bloating, sluggish digestion, unpredictable immunity, mood swings tied to an unhappy microbiome. And the reason isn't mysterious. It's that we quietly stopped eating the foods that built a healthy gut in the first place. This isn't medical advice, and fermented food isn't a cure for anything. But your gut is the foundation for nearly everything else your body does, and when that foundation weakens, it shows up everywhere. So today, I'm walking you through 15 forgotten fermented foods, the ones your ancestors relied on before anyone had ever heard the word probiotic. We'll cover where they came from, why they worked, and how to bring them back into your kitchen. Number 4 is a drink that entire villages once brewed communally, and it may have quietly protected them from diseases we still fight today. Number 11 nearly disappeared because of a single government ban. And number 15 is a food so pungent most people can't get past the smell, yet it may be one of the most powerful gut allies on this entire list. Let's begin. Number 1. Sauerkraut. Long before anyone used the word microbiome, Central European households packed cabbage into stone crocks with nothing but salt and waited. That waiting was the entire secret. No starter culture, no lab strain, just wild bacteria naturally present on the cabbage leaves doing their quiet work over weeks. A properly fermented, unpasteurized sauerkraut delivers billions of live organisms in a single forkful, along with vitamin C that helped sailors and villagers alike survive winters without fresh produce. The mistake most people make today is buying the pasteurized version from the shelf-stable aisle. Heat kills the very bacteria you're trying to get. Look for raw, refrigerated sauerkraut instead, and add a spoonful alongside meals rather than eating it alone. Sauerkraut is proof that survival food and gut medicine were once the exact same jar. Number 2. Kefir. Legend places its origin in the Caucasus Mountains, where shepherds noticed that milk carried in leather pouches sometimes transformed into something tangy, fizzy, and strangely energizing. What they'd stumbled onto were kefir grains, a symbiotic cluster of bacteria and yeast unlike anything else in the fermented world. A single cup of kefir can contain dozens of distinct microbial strains, far more diversity than most yogurts on the market today. Traditional families passed grains down for generations, sharing them the way you'd share a family recipe, because you couldn't simply buy them at a store. Add kefir to smoothies, drizzle it over fruit, or drink it plain. Kefir is diversity in a glass, a living gift passed hand to hand for centuries before anyone understood why it worked. Number 3. Miso. In Japan, a wooden barrel of fermenting soybean paste was treated with the same reverence as a family heirloom. Aged for months or even years, tended patiently until it developed its full depth. Traditional miso undergoes a slow fermentation involving koji, a beneficial mold, working alongside beneficial bacteria to break down soybeans into something far more digestible and nutrient available. The result carries probiotic activity along with B vitamins and antioxidants. The catch is heat. Boiling miso destroys its living cultures, so stir it into soup only after removing the pot from direct heat. Miso is patience turned into flavor, proof that the best things in a traditional kitchen were never rushed. Number 4. Kombucha. Communities across Northeast Asia once brewed this fizzy fermented tea communally, sharing a living culture called a SCOBY between households, the way neighbors might share sourdough starter today. That culture converts sweetened tea into a tangy, effervescent drink rich in organic acids and probiotic bacteria.
Some historical accounts even suggest it was valued for supporting digestion during periods when clean water and reliable food sources were far less certain than they are now. Commercial versions today are often pasteurized or loaded with added sugar, stripping away the very benefit you're seeking. Choose raw, low-sugar kombucha, or better yet, brew your own. Kombucha carried communities through uncertain times, one shared culture and one shared jar at a time. Number 5. Traditional yogurt. Not the sugar-laden, artificially flavored tubs lining modern grocery shelves, but the thick, tangy, minimally processed yogurt eaten across the Balkans, the Middle East, and Central Asia for thousands of years. Herding communities discovered that milk left with the right bacteria transformed into something that stayed fresh longer and sat easier on the stomach than raw milk ever could. Full-fat, plain, live culture yogurt supplies beneficial bacteria alongside protein and calcium without the added sugars that quietly cancel out the benefit in most modern products. Read labels carefully and look for live and active cultures on the container. Real yogurt is ancient medicine hiding behind a breakfast food label. Number 6. Natto. Few fermented foods provoke as strong a reaction as this one. Sticky, stringy, pungent fermented soybeans eaten across Japan for centuries, often at breakfast, stirred with a bit of mustard and soy sauce. Natto is fermented using a specific bacterium that produces an enzyme researchers have studied for its role in cardiovascular health, along with vitamin K2, a nutrient increasingly recognized for supporting bone and arterial health, and one that's remarkably rare in most Western diets. The texture challenges newcomers, but tradition rarely optimizes for convenience. It optimizes for what works. Start small, mix it into rice, and give your palate time to adjust. Natto is an acquired taste, guarding genuinely uncommon nutritional value. Number 7. Traditional sourdough. Before commercial yeast packets existed, every loaf of bread relied on a living culture of wild yeast and bacteria, carefully maintained, fed daily, and treated almost like a household pet. That slow fermentation process didn't just create flavor, it broke down gluten and phytic acid, making the resulting bread genuinely easier to digest than bread made with fast-acting commercial yeast. Some traditional sourdough starters were kept alive for decades, passed from one generation to the next, never allowed to die out. True sourdough, made with a long, slow ferment, offers a gut-friendlier alternative to the quick-rise bread dominating modern shelves. Sourdough is a reminder that even something as basic as bread once required patience most of us have forgotten how to practice. Number 8. Traditional pickles.
Not the vinegar-brined jars stacked in modern supermarkets, but true lacto-fermented pickles, cucumbers submerged in a simple salt brine and left to transform naturally over days or weeks. Jewish delis and Eastern European households once produced pickles this way as a matter of course, long before vinegar shortcuts took over commercial production. The wild bacteria present naturally on the cucumber skin does the fermenting work, producing tangy, crunchy pickles loaded with live cultures. Vinegar pickles, by contrast, are essentially dead, preserved through acidity rather than fermentation, offering flavor without the probiotic benefit. Check the label for fermented rather than simply pickled, and look for pickles kept refrigerated rather than shelf-stable. Real pickles are alive in a way the supermarket version simply isn't. Number 9. Tempeh. Originating in Indonesia, tempeh is made by binding cooked soybeans together with a beneficial mold that grows through the beans over the course of a day or two, forming a firm, dense cake. Unlike many fermented foods, tempeh's fermentation happens quickly, but the transformation is dramatic, producing a complete protein source that's more digestible and nutrient available than the unfermented soybean alone. Javanese households have relied on it as an affordable staple protein for centuries. Slice and pan-fry it, crumble it into stir-fries, or marinate it before grilling. Tempeh proves that fermentation isn't only about gut bacteria. Sometimes it's about transforming an ordinary ingredient into something the body can actually use. Number 10. Water kefir.
Less famous than its milk-based cousin, water kefir grains ferment sugar water into a light, fizzy, mildly sweet drink, historically popular in Mexico and parts of Europe as a dairy-free alternative for building gut diversity. Because it contains no dairy at all, water kefir offered fermented benefits to households and individuals who couldn't or didn't consume milk, making it a quietly inclusive tradition long before dairy-free became a marketing category. Flavor it naturally with fruit during a second ferment for a natural, mildly sweet fizz. Water kefir is proof that fermented traditions adapted to whatever ingredients a community actually had. Number 11. Chicha. Across the Andes, corn-based chicha was brewed communally for generations, a fermented drink central to both nutrition and celebration alike. Colonial authorities eventually restricted and banned traditional chicha production in various regions, viewing indigenous fermentation practices as primitive or improper, severing communities from a beverage that had nourished them, along with providing beneficial bacteria from the fermentation process. Though industrial versions exist today, few carry the same traditional fermentation process or the same cultural weight. Chicha is a reminder that fermented foods weren't only nutrition. They were community, ceremony, and identity, targeted precisely because they mattered so much. Number 12. Traditional buttermilk. Not the thin, uncultured product often labeled buttermilk in modern stores, but true cultured buttermilk, the tangy liquid left behind after churning butter, naturally populated with beneficial bacteria.
Farm households across generations drank this daily, considering it a normal, expected part of the week's dairy routine rather than anything special. It offered a way to use every part of the milk, wasting nothing, while delivering a steady, everyday dose of beneficial bacteria. Look specifically for cultured buttermilk on labels, as most modern versions are simply low-fat milk with additives, offering none of the original fermentation benefit. Traditional buttermilk turns dairy waste into daily gut nourishment. Number 13. Injera. In Ethiopia, this spongy, slightly sour flatbread is made from teff flour, left to ferment for several days before cooking, developing both its distinctive tang and a beneficial bacterial profile in the process. Injera serves double duty as both food and utensil, torn and used to scoop up other dishes, meaning the fermented bread touches nearly every bite of an entire meal. The extended fermentation process also improves the availability of minerals within the teff grain, making nutrients more accessible to the body than they'd be in an unfermented version. Injera shows that fermentation traditions developed independently across entirely different continents, each culture arriving at similar wisdom through its own path. Number 14. Salt-fermented fish. Coastal communities from Scandinavia to Southeast Asia developed methods of fermenting fish in salt over weeks or months, producing intensely flavored condiments used sparingly to season other dishes. This process allowed communities to preserve seasonal abundance through fermentation rather than solely through drying or smoking, while also introducing beneficial bacterial cultures into daily meals in small but consistent amounts. The result is powerful, pungent, and used in small quantities, a few spoonfuls transforming an entire dish rather than serving as a meal on its own. Salt-fermented fish is intensity in service of preservation, proof that fermentation adapted itself to whatever a landscape provided. Number 15. Natural apple cider vinegar. Unfiltered, unpasteurized vinegar, the kind with a cloudy strand of sediment visible at the bottom of the bottle known as the mother, carries a living bacterial culture that filtered, pasteurized vinegar simply does not. Farmhouses once produced this from leftover or imperfect apples, turning what would otherwise go to waste into a genuinely useful pantry staple used in cooking, preserving, and even folk remedies passed down through families. A tablespoon diluted in water before a meal was a common household practice, long before apple cider vinegar shots became a wellness trend with a hashtag attached. Choose the raw, unfiltered version specifically, as clear, filtered vinegar has lost the living culture that made the traditional version valuable in the first place. Apple cider vinegar closes this list the way it likely closed countless traditional pantries: unglamorous, practical, and quietly alive. 15 foods, 15 forgotten conversations between humans and the bacteria that kept them well. Sauerkraut, kefir, miso, kombucha, traditional yogurt, natto, sourdough, real pickles, tempeh, water kefir, chicha, cultured buttermilk, injera, salt-fermented fish, and raw apple cider vinegar. Some were daily staples, some were reserved for celebration, some were nearly erased by policy and prejudice. Yet every single one shares the same underlying truth. For most of human history, gut health wasn't something you purchased, it was something you cultivated. Quite literally, in a jar on your own kitchen counter. The modern probiotic industry exists because we walked away from these foods, not because we discovered something they lacked. We pasteurized the life out of our pickles. We swapped sourdough for pasteurized bread. We poured out cultured buttermilk and replaced it with a thin, additive-laden imitation. And then, having removed the living food from our diets, we turned around and bought capsules attempting to replace what we'd thrown away. The path back doesn't require perfection. Start with 1 jar of raw sauerkraut in your refrigerator. Try a small cup of real kefir this week. Ask your grocer whether their pickles are actually fermented or simply soaked in vinegar. These small, deliberate choices add up the same way they always did. One small daily habit compounding into something that quietly, steadily rebuilds what modern food systems stripped away.
If this video gave you a new food to try, a tradition you didn't know your own family once practiced, or simply a different way of looking at what's sitting on your kitchen counter, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we dig into ancestral foods and forgotten wisdom that modern life quietly pushed aside. Leave a comment and tell me which fermented foods surprised you most. Was it the pungent stickiness of natto, the banned communal drink of the Andes, or a tradition from your own family you'd completely forgotten about? I read every comment. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you